In our Law and Justice lead, it is time to pay up Donald Trump. Two massive legal judgments are coming due, and the former president is taking action today in at least one of them. CNN's Kara Scannell is live in New York. Kara, let's start with the E. Jean Carroll defamation case. Today, Trump appealed both the judgment while still putting up tens of millions of dollars. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Trump posted a bond of $91.6 million. That is so he could appeal the E. Jean Carroll defamation judgment of $83.3 million. The difference there is to cover interest. You know, the big question had been, would Trump be able to get this bond posted in time? The deadline was right around the corner. And now we learn that he did, and that the company that underwrote the bond is this large global insurance company, Chubb. It's a well-known company. There were questions of would he have to get money from other folks, or would he be able to get someone to back it up? So now we know that it's Chubb. We also know that Donald Trump signed this bond on Tuesday. This was the same time. You can see his signature right there. This was the same time that he was still asking the judge in this case for more time. So the judge is now asking Carroll's team if they have any objections to this bond or if they're okay with it as they know it, and to get back to them by Monday morning. If there is a disagreement, he wants all the parties back in court Monday afternoon. Jake.
Right. And on the screen right now, you see Trump's cash crunch deadlines for legal penalties. Monday, $83.3 million for E. Jean Carroll. Then March 25th, it says $454 million for the New York civil fraud trial. So that's coming due in just a few weeks, Kara.
Yeah, he really only has about 2 weeks to get that money together. And that is the bigger, it's such a big amount of money. It is a bigger question of will he be able to get someone to write a bond for it? Because to get a bond, he needs to be able to give them assets to secure it, whether it's cash, securities, investment bonds, or some property. And so the big question there is, how is that sorted out? Now, Trump had proposed putting up $100 million and then appeal the case. An appellate court judge struck that down, but an appellate court panel is hearing this. They will ultimately decide if he's going to get an extension to not have to post this bond while the appeal is playing out. They're expected to make a decision later this month. That will coincide with the timing that this is due, and also the start of Donald Trump's criminal trial in New York related to those hush money payments. Jake?
All right, Kara Scannell in New York, thanks so much. Let's bring in Russ Buettner. He's the investigative reporter for the New York Times who's covered Trump's finances extensively. Russ, so the nearly $92 million bond that Trump posted today was underwritten by the insurance company Chubb. In order to get that bond, Trump has to put up assets to show that the insurer that he's good for the money. What might those assets be?
Well, he has a certain amount of cash, Jake. We never really know how much there is. As recently as a year or so ago, it looks like he probably had $300 to $350 million in cash from selling a couple of assets and a refinance that someone else did of an investment he had a piece of. But one thing we've learned about looking at Donald Trump's businesses is generally they eat cash. So if he had that much then, we would expect he didn't now. And then this bond today locks up even more of his money, right? That boxes off some portion of the money that he committed to that. So I think it's likely that most of the cash that he has, if he has any left, is going to have to go to sort of guaranteeing these two bonds, meeting the needs of whatever insurer might want on the larger bond, and possibly signing over some assets that aren't already sort of really encumbered by mortgages.
So you've written in depth on Trump's cash position in the past, that the way he does business tends to burn through cash very quickly. Does he have solid sources of cash these days, ways that money is coming in to his coffers?
Well, it's a great question. The last time we had a perfect window on his finances was a couple of years ago. And what we saw is that when he was on The Apprentice, he had an incredible amount of money from being on the show and also from licensing and endorsement agreements that came along with that. In 2011, for example, he made $51 million just in that year from those things. That's a lot of money. But the businesses that he ran, his golf courses and his hotels, tend to require him to infuse cash on a regular basis. So as The Apprentice money dipped, the licensing money dipped down to almost zero by the time he entered the White House, those businesses were starting to eat up more and more of his cash. The Attorney General found there was 1 year where he would have been like literally out of cash, except for the beneficial interest rates he got on some of these loans that were subject to this fraud case. So it does raise always questions about whether he has access to it. I think one thing is certain, he does not have access to the 500 plus million he would need or the bond in this larger case. He can't just produce that much money and keep operating as a business. And that's what they said in that filing last week, where they said we could maybe get a bond for $100 million, and they asked the court to consider that. So I think it's really clear that larger judgment is not within his reach.
Yeah, and part of that judgment, that New York civil fraud judgment, barred the Trump Organization from doing business in New York, except in order to secure loans to pay the fines in the case. Now, the ban is on hold, on the ban on doing business in New York, while Trump appeals that judgment. But if that appeal fails, what happens to the Trump Organization?
Well, I think first he's got to get to the bond so he can have the appeal play its way out and buy some more time. That could be an existential threat to him. But if he has to ultimately just pay this judgment, he would exhaust more than all the cash that he has. I think that's very clear. He would have to sell something. They've got a court-appointed monitor that's in place there who would oversee what he could sell. And there's really just a few pieces of his enterprise that are left that sort of help support the other ones. And if the monitor or the court decided those were the ones that had to go in order to meet the terms of the judgment, that again would be another existential threat to the Trump Organization as an ongoing concern.
All right, Russ Buettner of the New York Times, always good to have you on. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.